The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey guys, this is Jackie. Thanks for joining tonight. I know evenings are hectic, and I appreciate you guys taking the time to hear some of our QT2 Outrival tips on your off season. Off seasons can be very important to strengthen anything that you had that was limiting you from the last season, and also take you into the 2019 season much stronger and healthier. So we're just going to talk about some of that tonight. One second, I'm having a little technical difficulty here. All right, here we go. Okay, so this is one of my favorite quotes about off season. You can read it on your own. If I had 8 hours to chop down a tree, I'd spend 6 sharpening my axe. And that's a quote by Abraham Lincoln. Kind of about what we're talking about tonight is just really preparing, getting down and dirty with the basics, and getting healthy and strong for the upcoming 2019 season. It's hard, depending on where you live, when you decide your off season starts. A lot of us will start off season after our last big race. For some of us, it's an Ironman, it's a half Ironman, so we've worked really hard for a long time. We're tired. Our bodies may have some niggles, may have some fatigue built up, may have some injuries. Sometimes our season ends early because of an injury. And for some of us who live in warm climates, it's really hard to determine when your off season begins and when it ends, because it's tri-season year round. So you really need to determine when your off season is going to be, because it's very important to take one. I always like to have my athletes and myself evaluate the season that they just are coming off of. So just kind of sit back and think about your past season, and even write it down, like what kind of things went well for you, not just with racing, but with your training. What obstacles did you encounter, maybe, in trying to fit your training into your life, or you were working too much and missed a lot of training. So all of these things, sit down and write what went well, what didn't go well, what you may change next season. And then another thing to do is look over your training log. A lot of you are probably on Training Peaks. Some people write things down in spiral notebooks, old school. And some of you may write little blurbs after your races, your race reports. So kind of evaluate all this and look over your race, what I'm trying to say, like where you're standing in your age groups in each discipline. I always like to look where someone's swim was in relation to everyone else in their age group, where they fell on the bike, where they fell on the run, and then see if you notice a trend, like they're always placing lower on the swim. So maybe you can determine that the swim is something you need to work on in the off season if you're constantly placing lower in your age group in that one discipline. Ask yourself also over the season, did your power increase? Did you get faster? Did you gain weight, lose weight? Were you consistent with your training? I always like to look, over my athlete's week, and do I see more green versus red, meaning green where the workout was done, red the workout was incomplete. And then if you have a coach or a training partner, chat things over. What did they think went well? What did they think didn't go well? A lot of times if you train with the same person over and over again, they know a lot more about you than you even know about yourself. So, they may notice, on certain workouts, you're doing a lot better than other things, and you may not see it yourself. So, talk to your training partners and get their input as well. Everyone really needs to take a break. It's hard, especially the more competitive you get in your age group. A lot of people feel like, taking a break is going to slow them down or put them backwards. And it's really not, because we do really break down our bodies in the season, and everyone needs to take a break at some time. Some people take a longer break than others, And depending, again, how competitive you are, how serious you take the sport, if you're buying for a Kona slot, you're going to probably take a shorter break than a middle of the age group person who's very busy with work and they are in it more for the lifestyle versus trying to get that Kona slot. So after you have evaluated your season, take a break, a week or 2 weeks, depending on how long your season was, kind of determines how long of a break you need. As I said before, sometimes ending a season with an injury will also be a determiner on how long you need to take off. If you end your season with a surgery, if you've torn something, if you've sprained something, your off season may be a little longer than if you've just finished your race and you just need a couple weeks off to get your mind back excited and get your body rested and healed. Again, the longer the race season was, the longer the race distance was as you finish your season, the more time you're going to take off. One little rule of thumb is if you look back over how many hours you put in of training for 2018, 1 week off for every 200 hours of training. So if you trained 600 total hours from January to December, that would give you 3 weeks off for your off season. Just because it's off season doesn't mean, once our bodies are recuperated and they've healed, doesn't mean we have to do nothing and we sit on the couch and watch movies all winter long. So you can get out there and do some fun and different kinds of training. These are the kind of training opportunities. I guess you should call them exercise versus training, but it's the type of exercise we cannot do when we are in that big block of training for an Ironman or a half Ironman. These are the things maybe our friends who are not in the sport are out doing, and sometimes we're a little envious, like, hey, they get to just go take that 1 hour gym class and call it a day, or they get to go mountain biking this weekend when I have to go on a 6-hour ride for my Ironman training. So go do those things that you can't do during the season: skiing, hiking, yoga, group fitness workouts, anything that's fun but can still keep you fit and give your mind a break from the rigors of triathlon training. Once you do determine you're ready to start back to training, of course, common sense, don't go balls to the walls right as soon as you get started back. You're going to want to start lightly. And I always like my athletes to take a week or two. Once they've taken a week or two off, I like them to just start swimming and biking and running each day what they feel like doing. So when you have a schedule and you wake up on a Monday and you have to do that swim, and on Tuesday you have to do that bike, but maybe for 2 weeks before you get back onto a schedule, wake up on a Monday, and if you feel like going for a bike ride versus a swim, then you go for a bike ride. Tuesday you wake up, maybe you want to swim again, swim again. So just a week or two of doing what you enjoy each day when you wake up. You want to keep these first couple weeks back to training super easy, super short, just really getting the body back into moving in a swim, bike, run fashion. Once you've determined that you have had a sufficient break, you will want to start somewhat of an off-season schedule. So this isn't as rigorous as your Ironman season schedule or your half Ironman season schedule, but you do want to start getting back on to a regular training schedule. Building it in a safe and sufficient manner with recovery weeks, just as you do during in-season. You still want to have that. You maybe will even take a recovery week every 2 weeks versus that fourth week like we do for most athletes. And depending on each athlete and what their upcoming season is going to hold, the off season can be spent building an aerobic base or keeping the volume low with increasing intensity. A lot of this just depends on the athlete. It depends on their strengths and their limiters. If they're going into an Ironman year and they've come off of Olympics and sprints and they have a lot of that fast turnover and they're in the faster anaerobic stage, they're going to want to spend a lot more time just steady state riding, steady running, just, zone one aerobic work, and vice versa. If they're coming off an Iron year and they're taking a break from long distance racing and they want to do sprints and Olympics, maybe you're going to keep the aerobic base work a little bit shorter and then start keeping the volume low, but increasing the intensity, harder intervals, shorter intervals, things like that. In just a little bit, we're going to talk about how to determine what your limiters are. But, once you're in your off season, one thing you can do, you're still swimming, biking, and running, but spend a little extra time on what you've determined your limiters to be. So I keep going back to the swim for some reason, but if that swim is what's holding you back and you're not getting out in a front pack on your races and you're trying to be very competitive, instead of swimming 3 times a week, maybe you swim more frequent but shorter swims. So maybe you swim 4 to 5 times a week for a month during that off season and get that frequency in there versus the longer swim sets, 2 to 3 times a week. So get to that pool 5 times a week and just get your body used to swimming, and then you can come back and feel really a lot better about your swim starting 2019 season. How do we determine our limiters? Like I said earlier, look back at your results for the past season and see if you notice a trend. Do you notice that you're always placing lower in one discipline than the other compared to other people in your age group? If so, that's one determiner of something you need to spend a little extra time on the next couple months. We're going to go through a couple slides here, and this webinar is being recorded and it will be in the library, so you can look back if these slides are going too fast for you. But what I want you to do is just think about the next 2 slides. I'm going to show you some categories, and I want you to rank them with 1 being the best and 7 being your weakest. And there's 7 categories, and let's just take a look at these different things here. So the first 2 on the slide, on this first slide, 1 being your best. So when you're looking at your swim, you're not just looking at how you feel about your swim in general. You're looking at a few different things. Maybe you're a pretty good swimmer, but you could use a little work on your technique. Maybe you have beautiful technique, but you're not quite as fast as you want to be. So maybe speed is holding you back. Or maybe you're a pretty quick swimmer, but you can't swim far, so you need to start doing some more longer, steady swim sets. So that's 1 category. So you can rate, 1 through 7, 1 being your best. Next, take a look at your bike. Maybe you're a strong cyclist, but maybe you can work on your handling skills. Maybe, you're used to riding in a straight line all the time and you need to work on your cornering. You need to work on hairpin turns. You need to work on grabbing those water bottles from the water stops. Maybe you need to get a little bit stronger. One thing on the bike is if you have a hard time raising your heart rate up on the bike, it could be that your strength limited in your legs. So you need to do some strength training in the gym. Or some lower cadence work on the bike, or bike a little bit more frequently. Maybe you need to be a little bit faster on your bike, so then you're going to incorporate some higher intensity intervals. Another thing to look at in the off season is your bike fit. If you've gone, as we age, our bodies change, we get a little bit tighter. Maybe we need a less aggressive fit on our bike if we're constantly coming off a long ride and we have a low backache or neck ache. Now's the time to get that bike looked at and maybe change your fit around a bit. And then just continuing on, now we're looking at the run. Is this number 1 of your best areas, or is this area number 7 one of your worst areas? And again, inside the run, you want to look at your form. That's something to be working on in the off season if it needs help. Working on your speed if you're going into a season of shorter racing. Look at your efficiency, look at your endurance. And those 3 things are the physical training, the swim, bike, run inside triathlon. But as we all know, there's a few other areas that we can look at that can hold us back. Maybe we are equally awesome in the swim, bike, and run, but for some reason we can never exceed our expectations on race day. So one thing you may want to look at is your mental strength. And we're going to talk about all these going forward, a little bit of what we can do. So maybe you are fast, but you feel that you're not fast. And so you get on the last miles of the run and you just start giving up, thinking everyone's passing you, when in actuality they're not. So that could be something that's holding you back on race day. Looking at your nutrition, your day-to-day nutrition, as we all know, like the better quality foods we put into our bodies, the better we are going to perform, the less often we're going to get sick. So it's just like putting gas in a car. So you may want to look at if you're tired all the time and in your training, maybe you're not taking enough calories in or you're not taking the right calories in. So that could be an area to look at in the off season. Also, your fueling during your training and racing. Maybe whatever you're taking in is not working for you, and this is the time to play around with it in the off season. Or maybe you're not taking enough in, or you're taking too much in. So now's the time to experiment with all of that when you're, not training, quote unquote, for real right now. And then again, flexibility is very important to work on, especially for those masters athletes, myself included. I'm a masters athlete. We used to be able to get by in our 30s and just, go and never stretch or never work on mobility. And the older we get or the longer we're in the sport, the more we are wearing our bodies out and wearing our bodies down, and the more important that daily body work becomes. So maybe that's an area that you have never really taken into consideration. And so those are some things you can learn and some exercises you can read up on and start incorporating into your day-to-day life. So if we've decided on those 1 through 7 categories that swimming is one of your limiters, these are just some ideas of what you can work on in the next couple months going into the 2019 season. So maybe this winter you've decided you need to spend a little extra time on your swim. So here are some things. I mean, a lot of these are common sense, but sometimes we may not think about these things. So maybe you have a local swim coach that can take a peek at your swim. So maybe you pay for a couple swim lessons with a local swim coach. Another thing, if you are using a coach within QT2 or Rival, we always accept, send your triathlon coach a video of your swim. So what you're going to want to videotape, you don't need an underwater camera. If you have one, great, use it. Otherwise, you're going to want to take a video coming from the front, and then from the back of your swim, and then from both sides, and then send those clips to your coach, and then they can slow-mo it down and really look at it on their computer and send you back some tips and some drills that you could possibly work on in the off season. Joining a master's group. A lot of us already are in master's group, but that's one thing. If you are one of the, you go to the pool every day and you don't feel like you're getting ahead, sometimes you can really make leaps and gains if you join a master's group. You're pushing harder. You get that little competitive juice flowing with the people in your lane, and you're just pushing a little harder than you would if you're at your local LA Fitness swimming in a lane all by yourself. During the off season, it's really important time to incorporate extra drill work and like quality swimming over quantity swimming. If you're not training for a long distance race right now, there's really no need to be going out there and doing 4,000 or 5,000 yards at a time. Keep your swim down at between 2,000 and 3,000, but start off that warm up set with a lot of drill work, working on technique. If you have rotation issues, or if you have, entry issues, or your hips are sinking, different things like that, look up some drills on YouTube if you've realized, where your holdback is, and find some drills to work on specific areas. Again, we've already talked about having someone videotape your swim. And again, like I said earlier, if this is your limiter, instead of swimming, try to add an extra swim in per week. Instead of swimming 2 to 3 times a week, try to go 3 to 4 times a week, but keep them shorter. These are just some sample swim workouts. I'm not going to read through these, but these are just a few of the things we use with QT2 and Rival athletes. Like I said, this is recorded if you want to go back and look at any of this. We have all our swim drills in the athlete library, so you can always go there also and find some ideas. These are just some of the more common drills a lot of us coaches use on the side of the pool when we're on deck. One really thing I love using with athletes in the off season is ankle ties. It really fixes a lot of issues. Works on arm turnover. It works on your body position. It helps you learn how to keep your hips up. So that is something, it really helps most swimmers. And then just going through, you can read these. A lot of these, write them down, get them off the recorded webinar, and you can, if it's not a video we have in our library, you can always YouTube, 6 kick switch and find videos to actually walk you through it. One at the bottom down there, the last drill, is the use of a tempo trainer. That's something by Finis. It's a little metronome that you put inside your swim cap, and it can help you with your timing of your arms, and it's very, very helpful for athletes. If you determined that bike was one of your limiters, here's some things to work on in the off season. A lot of times locally, your bike shops will offer a clinic on bike handling. You can incorporate some off-road cycling, some mountain biking, some gravel road biking. These are all great ways to keep your bike fitness, but to keep your mind fresh, so you're not just out there riding your tri-bike on the road or on your trainer like always. And mountain biking and gravel biking really help work on your handling skills as well. Great leg strengtheners. You can look at taking a bike camp or a bike clinic, somewhere fun. They're offered all over the country, and that's one way to really advance your bike skills. One leg isolation drills. A lot of people are on their trainers all winter, so while you're sitting there, do a few seconds on your left leg, and then do both legs pedaling, and then do your right leg. And this will help you find any dead spots. It'll help you get that push and the pull on the pedals and get nice big round pedal strokes versus pushing up and down. Hill climbing for leg strength, the high and low cadence drills, working on your high spinning, and then also your lower cadence, which works on your leg strength. And again, we've already said this, but take the time for a bike fit. And then sometimes just go on fun rides with friends. A lot of times in the tri-season, we're so focused on these certain workouts and certain intervals that we have to hit, or certain heart rates we have to hit, that we ride alone, or we can't really ride with some of the friends that we want to ride with. So now's that time to, get out there with your friends and have a fun ride. Go ride to the donut shop, or go ride and have a cup of coffee and come back, and just make it a fun off season where you're still on the bike. Again, just some sample bike drill workouts we use. It's mostly cadence work, working with lower cadence on leg strength, working with higher cadence, bike stomp drills. So these are just some things you can look back on. Here are some more bike drills. Again, just do a quick read through, and then you can go back and write these down later if you choose to. Again, just talking about the cadence drills, the single pedaling drills, handling skills, if that's one of the things, riding in and out of cones, and then figure eights in a parking lot, a parking space, just to get working on your quick, sharp turns and working on handling and cornering, things like that. Give you a minute just to read through these, and then we'll move on. All right, we're moving into run technique now. So if you determined this was one of your limiters, just some things you can incorporate into the off season to help your run. Downhill running works on your leg turnover and your speed, and you get that feeling of fast feet. Uphill running, we incorporate this into the season in our build stage a lot, and this is for leg strength. It's kind of like strength training on the run versus in the gym. Road races for practice. Now, I would stay away, depending on, what your season was, and if you have any little niggles or injuries, maybe a marathon's not the best. There's a time and place for marathon coming off, say, an Ironman or a half Ironman season, but depending on the athlete, it just has to be placed accordingly. And you also have to take in consideration what is early on in your 2019 tri-season as well. So I'm talking, shorter 5Ks, 10Ks, maybe a half marathon, just more for mental practice and keep the run fresh and exciting. Trail running is great for something different. It keeps you focused, keeps you having fun, and just mixing it up a bit. You may want to have someone look at your run analysis. If you feel like you just can't make any gains in your run, have someone look at you running, and again, if you have a remote coach, send them a video from your front, from your back, from both sides, and have them look at your form, or have someone local, if there's someone local that you can have take a look at your form. Working on your hip strength in the gym. This is where our run is really, a lot of our power comes from our hips on the run. So if you have weak hips or inflexible hips, now's the time. Look some exercises up on how to strengthen your hips, on how to get them more mobile, more flexible, and work on this in the off season. Dry running. This is just pretend running in the gym with stretch cords and light weights to simulate running. And then, as much as most of us probably hate it, aqua running is very good for endurance. It's not pounding on the joints, especially if you're injured and you can't run. Aqua running is sometimes your only option. So there's just some ideas just for your run. And then here's some common running drills. Most of us probably know these, but sometimes we don't really take the time to incorporate these running drills into our runs in the in season. So this might be a good time to get into a habit of just taking 5 minutes before you start running and do a warm up using these drills, because they do help your form, and it's also a dynamic way to warm up before you start running. A lot of us are able, especially the younger athletes, you walk out your door and just take off running. As we get older, it's not so easy to do that, and it takes a little bit longer to warm up. So you really want to focus on maybe getting into the habit of doing a nice warm up, a dynamic warm up before you run. So dynamic warm up can be these drills. It can be leg swings. It can be a few walking lunges, kick forwards, kick backs, just different things where you're stretching and you're warming up, but you're not running yet. The static stretching is supposed to be done after you run. Dynamic stretching prior to running, static stretching after. When I say static stretching, just for those who don't know, that's the traditional stretching you think of when you maybe pull your heel back to your butt and you just hold it there for 30 seconds and stretch it out, or you're doing side lunges to stretch out your inner thighs and you're holding it for 30 seconds. Those are the kind of stretching activities you do afterwards. Maybe you find that strength is one of your limiters and you really don't do a lot of strength training during the season. Now's the time to get into the habit of building into strength training into your schedule. Strength training is very, very important to do year round. We do recommend periodizing your training just as we do with training. Different types of strength training should be done in different periods of triathlon training. So you're not doing, for example, you're not max lifting year round, or you're not just maintaining year round. There's different time frames for different kinds of strength training. And we do have a webinar I just did a couple months ago on strength training, and that is recorded. So if it's something you want to go back and look at, it is in our library. But just in a nutshell, if you're coming off not having done any strength training, you don't want to go right into max strength. You want to take a couple weeks doing higher reps, lightweight, get the body adapted, and then you're going to want to move into lower sets with heavy weights for a period of 6 to 8 weeks, depending on when your next race is. And just going from there into more sport-specific strength work. So as we get older, again, not to keep harping on getting older, but it does, again, become very much very important. It prevents injury. It keeps us strong and fast in our 3 disciplines. And it does promote bone health and prevents osteoporosis. So something you definitely need to incorporate. I know it's hard to find the time when you're swim, bike, run training all the time, but you need to think of this as just as important as those 3 things. If going to the gym's not your thing and you feel intimidated, hire a personal trainer for one session to just get you a routine using some of the equipment in your gym. Or a lot of the gyms offer group strength training classes, makes it a little bit more fun. You're with other people. The high intensity interval classes, that's incorporating strength training with getting your heart rate up somewhat to lean out but still get strong. There's a lot of different ways you can look at strength training besides just going to the gym and lifting. So maybe looking back, body composition was your issue. So maybe you have a hard time losing weight, or you have a hard time gaining weight, you have a hard time getting to that race weight. So now's the time. In the off season, it's okay to put a little bit of weight on because we're not training as much as we are in the in season. And, obviously it's the holiday season where, going to parties, we're having some drinks, we're having some food that we wouldn't normally have when we're training. So most of us tend to put on a little bit of weight in the off season, but it could be also a time to get into better habits of eating and not necessarily, try to lose all that weight, but make better habits, better choices, and get into the habit. So when you are in the in season, you're into good habits of eating. If you usually meet your race weight, then you can allow yourself to, indulge a little more than people who have a hard time losing weight. So if you pretty much meet your race weight every season, the recommended allowance, depending on the athlete, is approximately 5 to 7% of what your race weight is. And if you have a hard time gaining weight, getting to your race weight, so you're one that tends to hold weight and you have a hard time losing weight, you will unfortunately should only allow yourself to gain 2 to 3% of your race weight. And from there, start once season gets in, you have, right off the bat, you need to start working on getting down to that race weight. If you feel like this is something you don't have a good handle on, you can read some books, you can invest in a sports dietitian to make a meal plan out for you, a nutrition plan, and just have someone holding you a little bit more accountable. Mental training was one of our choices for limiters. So maybe, you have a handle on your weight, you meet race weight every year, and you do all your training, all your training peak workouts are green, and you do everything your coach tells you, and you get to race day and everything just falls apart. No matter, you've stuck to your pacing plan and all of a sudden things fall apart. Then one thing you need to look at is where your head goes on race day, or where your head goes even on training. So maybe you need to strengthen your brain a little bit, or your self-confidence. So maybe you should do some research on athlete mental training. So a couple books, there's great videos, there's great things on the internet, but if you like just good old-fashioned books, a couple of my very favorites, one is called Mind Gym, and the other one is called Mental Training for Triathletes. And Mind Gym is just a bunch of short little stories, and at the end they have a little activity for you to do based upon the story. It's about different athletes, not just triathletes. It's a great book. And then Mental Training for Triathletes, obviously it goes through, each chapter is something different in regards to mental training, such as visualization and goal setting, imagery, breathing techniques, different things like that. Each chapter teaches you a different thing. So finally, we've spent a couple months working on our limiters, and we're starting to get antsy to train again. So now, how do we end the off season? How do we come out of off season and we get started into 2019? First of all, if you're an OCD triathlete like most of us, you probably already know what your A races are a year in advance. So most of you already have something in mind for next year. If not, now's the time to start looking. So really for A races, we really don't want more than 1 to 2 a year, meaning maybe one in the spring and then one in the late summer, early fall. And that way you have time to really do a good solid training block for both of those races. Maybe you're doing an Ironman and you are only going to have one A race, and that's a fall Ironman. Then that's okay. Then maybe you want to have some filler races just to keep you sharp and keep you fresh. So then you want to map out looking at doing some shorter sprints, Olympics, maybe a half on your recovery weeks. Not every recovery week, but pick and choose. Maybe there's a few races that you love to do, and then hopefully they fall in a recovery week. If not, you can make it work in other ways. But those are things to start thinking about now in the off season, what your season's going to look like. Then if you don't have a coach, determine if you're going into a big Ironman year or half Ironman year, your first time half Ironman, say, and you decide maybe you want a coach. So now's the time to start shopping for a coach. There's a lot of great coaches out there. I'm not trying to push coaching on you by any means right now. I'm just giving you some tips on finding one. Obviously, I'm going to recommend Outride for QT2, but within our company, we also have many, many coaches, everyone has different personality types, different coaching methodologies. So it's really a great idea to interview a few of them, just as if you were hiring someone for a job. Coaching's not cheap, and you're investing money in something. So definitely, just don't take the first person that comes along. Talk to people, find out who fits with your personality, your beliefs, and your training methods. So find the right fit, find the right coach. The right coach for you isn't necessarily your best friend's coach. Your best friend might absolutely love their coach, but maybe it's just not the right person for you. So you need to research on your own. So maybe a coach doesn't fit into your budget. There's a lot of cost-effective plans. We also outline, we make training plans. It's not a cookie cutter like the free online plans that you can find for a half Ironman and Ironman training. We sit down and we build a plan specific to each athlete. And then last but not least, if you choose against having a coach and an online plan and you just really, you've been in the sport for a long time and you're like, I just want to try this on my own. I want to see what I can do just designing my own plan. There's just a few tips here on building your own plan. I'm not sure why this title is so large, but first of all, you want a good periodization with your training. You want different stages of your training. Now, this is all going to be variable depending on the athlete, depending on their background, how long they've been in the sport, what their volume has been up till now in training, and what kind of race they're going in. Are they going into an Ironman and they're stronger anaerobically right now? Are they going into sprints and Olympics and they have a lot of aerobic strength right now? There's going to be some different types of training involved there. But really, in a nutshell, you want a good solid base, which is just your aerobic building. It's a lot of steady state cardio work. It's just working on building your soft tissue, durability to be able to carry you across the distance of the race and to get your body for the rigors of the harder training to come. After you have a good solid base training, next comes build, and this is building strength in a sport specific manner. So when I say building strength, I do not mean in the gym. This is not going to the gym doing squats and lunges. This is getting strong in each discipline. So a couple of things we do, we use low cadence work on the bike, and this is working on building our leg strength. Hill bounding on the run or hill repeats on the run, working on leg strength. Paddle work and buoys in the pool, working on our strength in the pool. So different little techniques within each sport. And then finally we get to peak, where this is working on getting us faster. Our intervals might shorten up a bit, but they might increase intensity. Instead of doing zone 2, zone 3 intervals, we may move into some best effort, give it all you've got kind of things for 30 seconds or a minute versus a 20-minute zone 2 tempo interval. Now, depending on the distance of the race, speed work doesn't always happen for, say, an Ironman race. And also for injury prone or masters, we may leave speed work out entirely for Ironman training and just do more tempo intervals, just because speed work it can be very damaging, and it's a really quick way to getting injured, especially best effort. And finally, the last stage before the race, of course, we all know is taper. And this is just giving a week or 2, 3 weeks, depending on the race distance, for the body to rest and prepare for the rigors of race day. If you're working on building your own plan, again, volume should build in a safe manner. Each week should contain 1 day off or at least 1 active recovery day. For masters and injury-prone athletes, you may want to have 2 days off per week, or 1 day off and 1 day of very easy active recovery. And every training block should always contain a recovery week. For most people, it's every 4th week. For some, it might be every 3rd week. So that's very important. Our strength and our fitness is always built on those recovery weeks. The end is here. Finally, off season is over and it's time to start our new season. So really, hopefully you're starting your season once it gets here. You want to be stoked. You want that fire burning in your belly. You want your mind to be fresh and excited to train again. A lot of times we start the off season burnt out and we're tired of training. So the off season is the time to get fresh again and have that excitement build. And obviously our body, it's time that when we start, we want to be rested, we want to be recovered, we want to be healthy, we want to be pliable and be super stoked to return to racing. And that brings us to our final two quotes in regards to off season. This is another one of my favorites. It's not the will to win, but the will to prepare to win that makes the difference. So we can all want to win as much as we want to win. However, if we fail to prepare our bodies to win, we are not going to win. And then the last and final quote by Benjamin Franklin, failure to prepare is preparing to fail. So I hope everyone got some tips to work on this off season, and you can walk away and figure out what your limiters are and what you need to do to fix them or turn your limiters into strengths for 2019. And if you have any questions at all, you can type them in the question box. You can email me later if something comes up afterwards. And we're all here. This will be recorded and in the library, the QT2 Al Rival library. So if there's something you missed, you can go back and watch it. And I want to thank you again for joining me tonight, and hope you can all go have a nice dinner now and put your feet up and get ready to watch some TV. And have a great 2018 holiday season, and good luck to everyone in 2019 season once it rolls around. I'll just sit here for a couple minutes in case anyone has any questions. Again, just go ahead and type them in the question box. And if you don't have any questions, you're free to log off. And thanks again for joining. All right, good night, guys. Thanks for coming.